Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam, and I'm about to get in a dunk tank.
Why?
Because it's our first, at the time of this recording, it is our first summer supper for our church on Wednesday nights.
Ooh,
and we're having a big festival. So I said dunk, not drunk. There is a big difference between the dunk tank and the drunk tank. And we don't have a drunk tank tonight.
Oh, okay.
At least we're not planning on having one.
Yeah, city provides those, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yes. Hey, guess who we have on the show today?
I'm going to guess Boyd Pelley.
Yeah, that was a question more for our listeners than for you.
Oh, my bad. Well, we were the only ones talking, so
I know. Welcome back to the show, Boyd.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, so Boyd Pelley, as most of you already know because you listen to the show regularly, is his company, Church Teams, sponsors the show. Every now and then we're going to have him on just to talk technology issues because this is such an important topic for the church. So today we're going to be talking about why churches lag behind with technology and what you can do to get ahead. He's got some really unique insights. So Boyd, we're glad to have you. And I want to tell everyone about Church Teams, if that's all right. Do you mind if I do my regular spot?
I would love that. Let's hear it.
Right. Hopefully, Boyd, you listen to like the front end of the podcast.
Help you. Yes, you
hopefully
do a great
you listen
job
at least to the first of the podcast so that you can hear our ad spot. But it's awesome to have you on the show. Yeah, you definitely need to check out Church Teams. They do a lot of things. They basically, if it involves church management software, they can do it. Whether it be texting, whether it be check-in systems, membership, online giving, scheduling, they do it all. Most of you know this already, but I know there's plenty of listeners that have not gone there to check it out. est.church is where you go to get the free offer from Boyd and from Church Teams. They've got great plans for everyone. Their prices start at $37 a month for churches under 200 people. You can add text to church for $10, online giving for an extra $20. It is an incredible system. Do us a favor. Boyd has been so generous and gracious to sponsor the show. That's how we are able to provide this content for free. So go to est.church, check them out. They'll fill out the form. They'll be glad to talk to you. So thank you, Boyd, for sponsoring the show, and thank you for doing such a great job for everyone, particularly the church and the kingdom, Church Teams.
Yeah, you're welcome. Our privilege. Thanks for what you guys do too. I don't listen to all of them, but I listen to a lot of them.
I was kidding with you earlier. And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I am dressed down a little bit because I'm getting in the dunk tank here in just a little while at my church. Oh man! All right, so let's talk about this with Boyd. Churches Boyd, would you agree with this? Churches tend to lag behind businesses when it comes to technology. Is true or false? Okay. Well, explain that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's lots of reasons on that whole issue, but my feeling with church adoption, now when I think of technology, realize I'm not thinking necessarily putting up a screen on Sunday with the words on it. And I'm not thinking about all of that kind of stuff. I'm thinking more about the data behind the scenes and how you use data to track people in groups and things like that. And I just feel like churches could easily be a decade behind how businesses in general, at least a decade behind how businesses are using, at least leading edge businesses, because that's not fair either, because not all businesses are really using software that great either.
Well, that's true because I've worked in the corporate world before going into ministry. And I can remember working at the bank, I won't mention which bank, and thinking at 22 years old, I think there's better stuff out there.
That's true. And it may have to do with the size or something. I don't know, but.
It's almost like the larger the business, the more antiquated the software. And I almost wonder if that can be the cases for churches too, because, switching costs are, as you know, in your business, that's a big deal, right?
Because it is a big deal. We do a lot of
that. You get ingrained in your system, and then it's hard, even though you may like another system better, it's hard to make the switch. How do you? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but when you're at church teams, let's say you've got a church. It's like, man, we've got our system. How do you walk a church through? And they look at church teams and they go, "This is better." But how do you like get them to switch? I'm just curious from a business perspective.
Well, I think it's like a lot of things. They have to feel the pain is heavy enough to drive the change. And they're looking and they're thinking, okay, we're using 7 different software applications. Every staff is doing something different. And it's like all of these systems are not really communicating with each other together, or we're using nothing. And there's got to be a far better way than my Excel spreadsheet or my sticky notes to do that. Now, for most people, it's somewhere in between those. They've got a software they've used for 25 years, and we've used it a certain way. It does, basic attendance. It does basic giving stuff like and we just think that's all software's supposed to do. And then you realize, oh no, there's a whole lot more. That's 20%, 30% of what's possible in terms of the making disciples thing. So what we'll do with them is help them understand, help them see through, like our Meet the Software webinar, interacting with them, all the different features and really the innovative things that's happened to our industry the last 10 to 15 years, so they can see how those are and then how they all kind of work together in one. Then we give them a chance, once they've kind of got the big picture, to do a 30-day trial. They can import some data. We'll help them do that. And then we've gotten really good at helping churches import data. And they love our team because somebody comes alongside and says, I've got a little data over here in our email thing. I've got some data over here in our giving thing. I've got some over here in our attendance piece. And we're really good at helping them bring all that together. And it just feels like, wow, all this thing I used to think was a mess, it's really nice we can do it together. So that's actually one of the core services we provide, is with data hygiene. That's what we call it. Yeah.
Data hygiene.
You like that? Well,
I do. I've never heard that term before. Did you make that up?
No, I've heard it. I mean, tech geek types use that term all the time. And I thought it was especially appropriate since you're jumping into a dunk tank here in a few minutes.
Well, it's probably, honestly, I've seen some dunk tanks, and I'm sure the person that's running this one at our church is great. I'm not counting on hygiene to be at the top of the priority list tonight.
Okay, just
I
checking.
would not. This whole topic brings up a suggestion that I often have for churches, is to regularly audit what you're doing, the services that you use. And that can be who you have a copy machine contract with, where you buy your paper in bulk, maybe where you buy your cleaning supplies, those sort of things. And I suggest right around the time that you do budget season, maybe a little bit before, go ahead and look at everything with an eye toward, is this the best that we can do? And you can often find out that sometimes you are putting 3 or 4 softwares together, and maybe you don't need to do all of that. Maybe you use 3 softwares. One of them has the features of the other 2. You just got to pay a small fee and, port it over. And then you've got that all in one house. Same thing with other things that are not relevant to this discussion, but you can often figure that out with like your phone systems, who's your carrier, who's your voice over IP, these sort of things. If you just begin to make a habit of it. Now, I don't suggest that you change your software every year or anything like that, but at least look and see, are we using this resource to the best that we can? Should we do training for everybody? And regularly have training and ask the company, what's the latest features that have come out? How can we use those? How can we better improve what we're doing around here?
Great suggestion.
Zero-based budgeting is analyzing these sorts of things. So if you truly practice, what will happen is you'll ask that question: do we really need 3 or 4 systems, or can we go to one? And that's what I like about church teams, is they pretty much can consolidate a lot of systems into one. Yeah. All right, Boyd, I got a question for you.
All right.
Does the personality of the pastor play a role into why churches lag? Because I remember, I won't tell the name of the church, because we don't like bashing churches on this show, but we do like to tell stories. So there was a story of a pastor who, now this was not that long ago, who was wondering if he needed to learn email in order to get another role that he wanted, because his assistant printed off everything and he responded by writing by hand on the email, and then she would write the email back. Again, if that's your system and you've got a good assistant, good for you. That's not really how the world works right now. But so I'm just curious, do you encounter more entrepreneurial types, or is it people who just don't know anything and they just rely on you? I mean, what role does the personality of, I guess you probably might deal with more executive pastors too than anything else, or sole pastors.
Yeah, well, I think it does. To your question, I do think the temperament, personality of the leadership does make a difference. And when you think of most pastors, they honestly did not get into ministry to run spreadsheets and to do databases. That's really not their personality. Typically, they're much more concerned about teaching, about getting into the word, exegeting the word, bringing it out, pastoral care, loving and caring for people, and those kind of things. Their gifts are typically in those kind of arenas, lean towards that. So they wouldn't have the bias, in part because, they're doing this thing. They got to get ready for every single Sunday that comes. And that's very different than a business leader who, at the end of the day, he wants to know, is our inputs, are our outputs greater than our inputs? And so he's got a whole different level of motivation maybe for looking at it than pastors do. Although I think when a pastor gets the idea that the main purpose of a church software, church management system, is for the purpose of pastoral care and discipling people, and make that connection, that having it together so that it can give you feedback on that 80% of the people that aren't in your close circle. In most churches, you've got only so many people that any one person can have in a close circle, as close relationships, acquaintance level relationships, and all of that. Outside of that, especially as a church gets to any kind of size, they need some other tools or other feedback systems to do that. Now, you can have other pastors and team members that are hopefully helping with that, but that's not always the case. And then the other thing, I think, to your point too, about, the pastor printing out all their emails, and if they need to learn that, you hear all the time about somebody saying, I'm not computer literate. There's a whole generation of folks that use that as a term. And there's just a little bit of stubbornness. I'm not ready to change. I don't want to do things differently. I'm not really open to whatever. One of the things that occurred to me watching a little bit of 1923, that Netflix show, was how resistant they were to cars because they were used to horse and buggies and all of that. And that when I thought about that term, that's what I think about is, okay, well, you cannot be computer literate if you want, but the whole world is not going to respond. Is not going to move that direction.
Yeah.
And so there is, and you just got to kind of deal with that a little bit. And that was kind of like our last blog or our last podcast, when we talked about how to communicate with those older generations, right? And being loving and caring with them, seeing them as digital immigrants and doing that. And I think churches can do some things to help bring those older folks along with a little humility. And I do think that the pastor needs to be able to express that humility and that commitment to do it.
That was a really good episode. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It's in our feed. Boyd did a really good job of explaining how you can bring along the next generation. Let me ask you this: when it comes to church size and the services that you offer, I know that you can offer, to any size church, whether it's a teeny tiny little house church or whether it's a mega church. But what do different size churches seek? Is that something that you see? Is there any difference between church size and technology, or do they every church need the same thing?
Well, every church is about making disciples, right? Reaching people, helping them walk with Jesus, doing events and outreach to get them to come, helping assimilate them through a process to where they make a commitment to Christ, get involved in a group and serve. Any church doesn't do that, They all do that, right? And so all of that process is very similar. You might use different language and have different things that it looks like, but all of those are fairly similar. What's interesting to me, having done this a long time, is those ultra mega churches, they're going to build their own, but they're going to do everything their own anyway. So that's sort of a different group, and we kind of a long time ago recognized, okay, well, that's just how they're going to think. They're going to be their own church management system and build it themselves. It's fine. The ones that really need the help, well, I think every size do, but you're much more average size church. Church of 150 to 500 to 1,000, right in that whole size, especially when you break that barrier of people that I know. A church of 50 still has a lot of needs for software that can help them. They have to do statements every year, and a ton of help on that. But especially when you get outside that circle, that 150, that 200 barrier mark for pastors to get outside, I think that's where the adoption really becomes handy. And church planters, they see the need because to them, software is a whole different thing. It's more of a marketing tool, and they live or die by the marketing side of it. They don't even see it hardly as a giving and attendance tool. It's primarily a way for us to do communication, to do outreach, to do marketing, to do pipelines and workflows and all of that. And they get that because that's normal behavior in the business world, is we're going to develop a pipeline or a workflow to be able to follow people up. Unfortunately, a lot of churches that have been around a while, a little larger, more established with the software, they haven't really recognized the marketing potential and the power of helping use software to track process.
That's really good insight, that established churches tend to view software more as management, and church plants tend to view software more as marketing. But it makes a lot of sense. That's just where they are. Churches don't have business cycles, and we really got to be careful about, comparing churches to businesses. But there is a church cycle. We won't call it a business cycle. And wherever you are in that cycle, from startup to becoming established to really long-term established church, you're going to use software differently. All right, I want to take a little different perspective here, and I want to get Josh's take on this as well. Privacy concerns in software. That's a growing issue. And I think you talk about churches lagging in certain areas. It's protection of their members through software when it comes to privacy. Josh, do you do anything at your church? What does that look like? And then I'll ask Boyd.
Yeah, the topics come up, and so we've had to talk with church management software before about how are we being protected and what's the privacy concerns that relate to this. I think in some ways, if what I would answer back to that is printing everything out, having things on paper, having things in books and stuff like that. You're not avoiding privacy concerns by using a software. You still have privacy concerns when everything's printed out, when all of the permission forms are printed out, when all the registrations all printed out, that sort of stuff. You still have privacy concerns. The real question is just how are you going to deal with privacy concerns? When you're not using technology, you're not dealing with the privacy concerns. Whereas a software like Church Teams or some of their competitors, they are thinking about this. They're thinking through it and want to make sure that your stuff is secure. So for the church out there that's lagging behind on software, saying, we don't want to jump into software because there's privacy concerns, I just want to remind you, you have privacy concerns. You've just got it all in one file. Somebody can come in, pull open that file, and it's exposed. There's no password on the file or the stack of papers that's sitting on somebody's desk that has everybody's social security numbers on it. That sort of stuff is not secure.
I'll go on a limb and say the more antiquated you are, the more privacy concerns you have.
Probably.
There was one of the things that makes me cringe when I see it, and I don't see it nearly as much now, but I used to see it a lot more. It's still out there where churches will put their church directory as a PDF online or some list of names with phone numbers of their members online. Now, here's what happens when you do that. You will become the victim of a phishing scam. People will get those numbers, they'll call, they'll pretend to be the pastor or something like that, or text even and pretend to be somebody else. Hey, we need X, whatever X is, we need money. And it can become a real issue. When I got to West Bradenton, we still had a server room and an on-site server, which very antiquated system. We don't have that anymore. And we had concerns about, what if we put everything in the cloud? And, this was a while back when, it was still a thing, right? I'll put everything in the cloud. Well, it turns out having that on-site server, okay, you're not going to get hacked from the outside. But if you get hacked from the inside, it's a huge deal. And guess what? Churches are entirely vulnerable to inside hacks because your doors are always open. There's 100 people walking around, and anybody can come in, on a Sunday morning. And so I would just say, generally speaking, the more antiquated you are, the more privacy concerns that you probably have, and the more vulnerable you are. But Boyd, I want to get your perspective on this. When it comes to privacy concerns in software, what does church teams do, and what insight can you add to for our listeners?
Well, and to your point, if your computer attaches to the internet, it's vulnerable. Okay, so just because you had the server in your closet in the back of the office, it's vulnerable. So you have to do all these security protocols locally on your computer there as well. And most church staffs aren't doing it as well as a professional IT team is. Now, security is a big deal. We would lose all trust completely of people. I mean, if there were security problems, we do all kinds of things behind the scenes. We have automated processes that are managing and watching hits and tracking all kinds of stuff like that. We have other protocols for people that ping it with different kinds of things, some of them even to deceive people that we know are nefarious, to kind of mislead them to different directions. So there's like this whole behind the scenes underground in the dark room battle going back and forth between somebody and some other, wherever, it can be anywhere in the world, and software. So there's all of that sort of thing that you do. And most church management software are going to be about 1,000 times better at that than an average single church is, for sure, because they just have the skill and see that and bring the other pieces in. A couple of ideas on that. We also see not just putting the PDF of a directory out there, but sometimes even people with a church directory that's password protected or that make directories available at all. We'll see people be so bold as to call in to try to get access to a directory, to get a password. It's a different phishing scheme. And it will. So what you have to do is train. I mean, they'll call and say, hey, we're new members. We're just visiting your church. We met somebody at the whatever the other day. We want to get their phone number. Can you give us access to the directory? And we've had staff email directories to whatever, right? And so we've had to research and find that because they were just sure, church teams was compromised. And what really happens, and this is the problem in churches with privacy and security, is the phishing schemes. It's not really people breaking in. First of all, the only value of breaking in is to get contact information to do the thing, like you said, where, first of all, they'll go to the church website, they'll read about us, learn all about the pastor, go to their LinkedIn, see their background, understand who their family is. Then when they write that email, sending it out to everybody, hey, we're on vacation because last sermon we said we were going on vacation. They send out an email to everybody saying, hey, well, I'm on vacation. Our cruise got dill and somebody stole our wallet and I need money. Can you send whatever, right? And so one of the things that we're starting to see on this issue is a use of information policy. The people will roll into like a new member class or whatever, and it is only a 2 or 3 sentence statement about here's how we're going to use your information. What that does is it tells your people you're thinking about it, gives them a little more confidence to share with you some just basic information, and tells them exactly how you're going to use it and what it's not going to be used for. also to make people just aware. Hey, when somebody does something like that, or somebody's asking you for something seems weird, it probably is. Be sure and double check it.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is the staff training side, helping make sure the staff are aware of that. And sometimes it's just that volunteer that's answering the phone, because they can be the ones that are, they're the front door that have some access to do that. So that's the other side on the security stuff. Now, behind the scenes, you got all kinds of stuff that's through the roof. But yeah.
Josh, has anyone ever pretended to be you and done a phishing scam either on your staff or your church?
Yes.
Oh, all the time with me. Like it's
it
twice a
happened-
year. It happens all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
you guys.
Our staff have gotten so alert to it, and nearly every time it happens, I will kind of make fun of it from the pulpit and say, "Hey, I will never, ever, ever email you and ask you for money. Ever. It's never going to happen. Don't ever, answer that." So, because we've got older members that are more vulnerable to feeling that kind of stuff. I do want to add one thing. I think we're kind of up against the clock here, but I would just add this for those churches whose leadership's listening to the podcast right now, and you're thinking, we're lagging behind, we don't have a church management software, that sort of stuff. And one of the immediate arguments is, I'm fine. I know how to look up their phone numbers. I know most of these members, and the ones I don't know, I'm doing it myself. Here's what I would really encourage you is a lot of this church, it's not just what you can get out of the software, the information you can pull from the software. It's also the way in which the membership can connect with the church, which contact information. We regularly allow our church to update their records, and we send out the link. We tell them how to do it, and they update their own information. Some people can opt out of being listed in the directory. Now that means other members can't see them, but we can still access their information. So it's not just about you when you lag behind on technology. You may think this is just an in-house thing. This is just, and I've done ministry for 35 years. I'm doing just fine. It's not just you. It's also the members' connection and the value of ministry that they're getting out of the church. And so when you lag behind, you're actually at a detriment to your small group leaders, your youth group workers, your membership, especially your children's ministry. It's going to help all of them tremendously for your church to, kind of get up 10 years or 15 years or 20 if you need to. It's going to help a lot.
Well, thank you, Boyd, for joining
Josh.
the show and for giving us such great information about technology in the church.
Absolutely. My privilege. Thanks, you guys.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Again, there's that free offer. 2 months free is the offer at est.church. Go check out Church Teams. Just did a whole episode on technology. This is your opportunity to jump right in before you get into budget season. Get ahead of that. And now is the time to be researching what your technology needs are, and you need to start with Church Teams and go to est.church and give Boyd a call. I know he would be glad to talk with you, and his team would be glad to talk with you. Also want to thank the sponsor of our show, Church Answers. I work for Church Answers, so I can say we still are offering scholarships. So this is really a big deal. And we've got somebody who's being very generous and helping anyone out who wants to do Church Answers University. So you can go to churchanswers.university to see all about it. Here's the offer. 50% off scholarships. So this is a value of $748. We're offering you $748 to go through Church Answers University. We have certification programs in women's discipleship, and we have certification program in Christian ministry. So the way that you can get this scholarship, 50% off, and by the way, that includes your books too when you do Church Answers University. The way that you get this scholarship is to email Matt, M-A-T-T, at churchanswers.com. Again, Matt at churchanswers.com. Matt's the dean, and he would be glad to talk with you about getting enrolled and taking advantage of this scholarship. So thank you, Church Answers University, for sponsoring us.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and make sure that you check out Church Teams, Church Answers, and our social media accounts. We'd love to hear the ways in which you are using technology in your local context and maybe inspire a future show. We'll catch you next week.